Alyssa buried Elizabeth's body, covered up the grave with mud, went back home, and wrote it in her diary. And then I guess she went to church after that, which is so ironic. Alyssa Bustamante had a rough start to life. She was the result of a teen pregnancy, and her parents didn't really seem to care about her or her siblings. They were both addicts and criminals who were constantly going in and out of jail. Because of this, Alyssa and her 3 siblings were raised primarily by their grandparents. Her grandparents hoped that by raising her away from her toxic parents, they would give her a good foundation for a happy life. But I'm sure Alyssa still knew what was going on, and it was probably a tough pill to swallow that her parents basically didn't want anything to do with her. As a teen, Alyssa showed major signs of depression. She resorted to self-harm and even tried to end it all at age 15. Her grandparents noticed her disturbed behavior, so they took her to a psychologist who prescribed her antidepressants. But even on the meds, she continued to have dark thoughts. And she was even super public about it, because on her YouTube and MySpace, she said her hobbies were cutting herself and killing people. That's a major red flag. I wonder if her grandparents saw this at the time. She also posted questionable tweets that said, "Bad decisions make great stories," and "All I want in life is to find a reason for all this pain." So I want to say those posts are so obvious, and Alyssa's family should have intervened, but that's probably because I know what happened after. At the time, I'm guessing people just probably thought she was going through something and made those tweets in an emotional state. But everything changed on October 21st, 2009. That night, Alyssa's 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, went missing. The girl's mom last saw her daughter leave the house at around 5 p.m. to play with one of her friends, who happened to be Alyssa's little sister. She knew her daughter would be back before sundown because she was terrified of the dark. But 45 minutes later, Elizabeth wasn't home, and it was dark outside. Elizabeth called her daughter's phone a bunch of times, but she didn't answer. Elizabeth's mom called Alyssa's house, but the grandma answered and said Elizabeth was never there. Her mom started freaking out, so she called the police. And it kind of seems a bit dramatic for Elizabeth's mom to call the cops after her daughter was only gone for 45 minutes, but she had a feeling, and you can't deny maternal instincts. The cops showed up at Elizabeth's house 15 minutes after the 911 call was made. They searched the area and didn't find the little girl anywhere. They contacted Elizabeth's phone provider and got them to ping her phone 3 times. All of the phone pings were coming from a wooded area by her house. At this point, the police got super concerned that something bad happened to Elizabeth. They filed a missing persons report and got the FBI involved to help with the investigation. Local police officers, FBI investigators, and over 300 volunteers from the area teamed up to search for Elizabeth in the woods. And apparently the town this all happened in only had a population of 1,100. So that means over 1/4 of the entire town was looking for this girl. I want to say those people really had each other's backs, but based on the size of the population, there was probably nothing better for these people to do than look for a missing girl. And I'm sure they were just being nosy, because let's be honest, who isn't nosy? So everyone is scouring the woods for Elizabeth. There were helicopters, planes, and dog teams searching for her. Officers set up checkpoints for people entering and exiting the city. And they even searched their records for ex-convicts in the area that could have been responsible for snatching up Elizabeth. And still, no luck. Investigators decided to interview the little girl she was supposed to hang out with that night. It was Alyssa's 6-year-old sister, Emma. Emma said she had been playing with Elizabeth that night. After about an hour, she said Elizabeth left and started walking home. Officials checked with Emma's other siblings, and all had been accounted for that night, except Alyssa. That's when investigators started to speculate that Alyssa could somehow be involved. She didn't really have an alibi during this time of Elizabeth's disappearance, and even skipped school that day. But that could mean anything. A troubled teen skipping school is a pretty common occurrence. Alyssa was brought in for questioning where she said she had no idea what happened to Elizabeth. But interviewers noted Alyssa was acting super calm the whole time, which could have just been her demeanor. She seems to be familiar with the police based on her parents' background. Well, during all of this, everyone was still frantically searching for Elizabeth in the woods. Suddenly, one of the volunteers tripped on something and looked down to see what it was. It appeared to be some sort of grave that was the perfect size for a 9-year-old girl. Uh-oh. This can't be good. The volunteer, who was probably losing it, notified the police. A forensics team was then sent out to the site to investigate further. A few hours into the suspicious grave investigation, they couldn't find Elizabeth anywhere. Officers brought Alyssa to the scene, and she told them she had dug that grave. Wait, so why would there be an empty grave in the woods? I wonder if there was ever anything inside. And did Alyssa just dig graves for fun? Well, actually, she did. After further questioning, Alyssa told investigators that she liked to dig graves and bury deceased animals in them. She said she would only bury animals that she had already found lifeless, but based on the nature of her grave digging hobby, it wouldn't surprise me if she actually snuffed these animals herself. Whoa, this is getting even worse. And I wonder if her grandparents knew about any of this. Did they not find it weird that Alyssa would go missing for hours and probably come back covered in dirt? Clearly, Alyssa was looking super sus at this point, so the FBI went to search her house. And wait until you hear what they found. In Alyssa's room, there were super creepy quotes written all over the walls. Some were written in pen, others were written in her own fluid. Ew. There was another drawing on the wall that was of the outline of a person with a bunch of slashes through the head and arm. And next to the drawing, she wrote Emma. Wait, as in her 6-year-old little sister? Well, Alyssa apparently really liked decking out her walls because investigators also noticed a bunch of letters taped to her walls. They were letters from her dad, who was in prison. Okay, so maybe he was still trying to stay somewhat involved in his daughter's life, which is kind of cute. But then again, I'm not sure if that would be a good thing for Alyssa, considering the guy was in prison and had an extensive criminal background. But things started to get real freaky when officials found her diary and started looking through it. And normally, diaries are off limits. But I guess when there's a missing little girl, all bets are off. In one of her entries, Alyssa wrote about wanting to burn down a house and slay everyone inside. I feel like that's not something a 15-year-old girl should be writing about. Like, what happened to having innocent crushes and trying to write songs or something? There was one page that was scribbled all over in blue ink. That's a bit sus. Seems like Alyssa was trying to cover up something that she wrote. But officials were eventually able to make it out. The entry was dated October 21st, 2009. AKA the day Elizabeth disappeared. Underneath the date, Alyssa wrote, "I just fucking killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. Now they're dead." I don't know how to feel at the moment. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the, oh my god, I can't do this feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. I'm kinda nervous and shaky though right now. Okay, I gotta go to church now, LOL. Yo, did Alyssa just say she is going to church after slaying someone? A day after the discovery of the diary, Alyssa was brought to the FBI headquarters for an interrogation. Officials brought out her diary and told Alyssa they knew about her most recent entry. You know, the one where she literally admits to terminating someone. In Alyssa's first confession, she told investigators she was walking in the woods with Elizabeth that day. She said Elizabeth fell, hit her head, and passed away. Yeah, I don't think that's how that went down. Investigators didn't buy Alyssa's story either. They continued to interrogate Alyssa until she finally caved and told them what actually went down that night. So Alyssa said she sent her little sister over to Elizabeth's house to get her to come outside to play. Then she told her little sister to go back home while she grabbed Elizabeth's hand and started walking her into the woods. The whole time, Alyssa kept telling Elizabeth she had something to show her. Alyssa and Elizabeth kept walking deeper into the woods for about 15 minutes until they reached a grave that Alyssa had already dug for her. She already dug a grave for her? That's supposed to happen after someone passes away, not before. Once they made it to the pre-dug grave, Alyssa choked Elizabeth, jabbed her a bunch of times in the chest with a blade, and then sliced her neck. After the deed was done, Alyssa buried Elizabeth's body, covered up the grave with mud, went back home, and wrote it in her diary. And then I guess she went to church after that, which is so ironic. So after Alyssa fessed up to the crime, she led investigators to the gravesite where Elizabeth's body was recovered. An autopsy was performed and medical examiners concluded that Elizabeth's injuries were consistent with Alyssa's confession. So why would Alyssa want to knock out an innocent little girl? Well, after talking to some of Alyssa's family and friends, investigators found out about her sadistic nature and dark thoughts. They even found out about a time Alyssa told one of her best friends that she wondered what it was like to slay someone. She said she wanted to know what it felt like to have the power to take someone's life away from them. Wait, so she literally just ended a girl's life for no good reason? I mean, not that there's ever a good reason to whack out a 9-year-old girl, but she did it just to know what it feels like. Based on the severity of her crime, Alyssa was tried as an adult. During her indictment, Alyssa pled not guilty. Girl, we know it was you. But then Alyssa's attorneys filed a motion to suppress her confession because they claimed the interrogators asked a bunch of questions they technically shouldn't have, according to the law. Basically, since Alyssa was a juvenile, investigators shouldn't have asked her all of those questions the way they did. Because of that, her confession was thrown out and could no longer be presented or considered in the trial. Alyssa didn't go to trial until she was 18, which is 3 years after the initial incident. She agreed to a plea deal where she was charged for the act in second degree instead of first. By taking the guilty plea, Alyssa would escape an execution sentence. During her sentencing, she told Elizabeth's parents that she was sorry about what happened and said, "If I could give my life to bring her back, I would." Okay, but based on her journal entry, it seems like she wasn't really sorry. So in 2014, a few years after Alyssa had been in jail, there was a Supreme Court case that invalidated mandatory life sentences for juveniles. Alyssa said she would not have taken the guilty plea in her initial trial if she knew this new law was about to be put in place. So she tried to appeal her case, but it was denied. And to this day, Alyssa is still in jail. Okay, but something not really talked about is the fact that there were technically 2 graves that Alyssa dug up in the woods. You know, the empty one that the volunteers stumbled across and the one with Elizabeth in it? Well, some people, including a few police officers, thought Alyssa initially dug them to bury her 2 brothers, which is wild. But based on the drawing on her wall, maybe Emma was her next victim? Okay, I'm getting carried away with this theory. Well, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. And remember, if you ever commit a serious crime, don't gush about it in your diary unless you want to get caught. Or maybe don't commit a crime at all, and then you won't have to worry about it. Unless the crime is eating all of the cupcakes.